All right, this next question is actually for me. Ian, I've been a casual metal fan most of my life. But in recent years, I've gotten more into it because my 17-year-old son is really into metal, plays guitar, etc. Very cool.
It's cool.
Over the past year, we've seen Megadeth and Pantera in concert,
Whoa,
awesome in the
that's
Toronto
cool.
area, which I've seen both bands. I got to see
Cool.
the real Pantera,
Yeah.
and I have seen the new version of Pantera with Zach Wilde and Charlie Benanti, and that was awesome too. And also the fact that I got to like interview Charlie Benanti and then I get to watch him up on stage. I'm like, this is pretty badass. So he said, I learned from my son about the early glam metal days of Pantera. Apparently, it's sort of an embarrassing secret they don't talk about. I'm just curious, are there Pantera fans that are dedicated to the early glam stuff? If anyone knows about them, it would be you, Ian. Yes, you are correct on that. Thanks. And this is Dave in Oshawa, Ontario. So, I don't know if you listened back to when I had Anthony Bryant on the podcast, who goes by the hair metal guru, and we talked all about, and he's also a National Guard vet. So we
Yeah.
we spoke about the glam days of Pantera. And funny enough, so the last book I read was the 1993 Glassjaw Coffee Table book, which is this is really quick. I knocked this out in like an hour. Big Glassjaw fan. It's more just about 1993, but I just started Jerry Abbott's book, who was the father of Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul, of course. And Jerry Abbott actually just died. I've been meaning to read this book for a while now, but I just picked it up. And I mean, he is really who got the band started because he worked in the music industry, had his own recording studio. And Dimebag and Vinnie were playing like in high school days. And yes, they started out as a glam band. They had a vocalist named Terry Glaze who was more like the Def Leppard style, and they had that Def Leppard style kind of electronic drum sound. And look back on pictures. Just Google Pantera Glam Days, and you will see Vinnie Paul wearing like women's clothing with
I
leopard
didn't, yeah,
prints. And
I didn't know that, dude. I
yes,
had no idea. I thought they were always just hard rockers, man. I didn't know
and
they
I
were
think
glam
that's what they
rockers.
wanted people to believe. You know what I mean? Because they had this tough guy image, and they even there. You could even look back on old interviews. I remember finding one where the old album said Diamond Darrell, and I think it even said Diamond Darrell on Cowboys from Hell. And then they said, no, it was always Dimebag Darrell. That was a misprint. And it's like, no, guy, it was Diamond Darrell. But I mean, you definitely know how it was in the early 90s
Oh
that if a
yeah.
band like that with a tough guy image came out and said, oh, yeah, we used to wear high heels and women, like, you wouldn't be taken seriously. So they kept all that stuff way under wraps. But basically, what happened was they had three albums they did that you could look up as Pantera. It was more glam. Like I said, it sounds like Def Leppard. It's great. I love it. Dimebag Darrell was like undeniably amazing guitarist. Vinnie Paul, undeniably amazing drummer. Then Phil joined the band and replaced Terry Glaze, and they put out an album called Power Metal. And it sounded more like Judas Priest style. It wasn't exactly like the Pantera that people are used to. And then when they put out Cowboys from Hell is when the style really changed. Now, people might be wondering how they got that style because you may think it's like very unique to Pantera. Those guys were all from Texas, and then Phil Anselmo came in from Louisiana, and he brought in a whole new influence. And there was a band from Louisiana that you could look up called the Exhorder. And if you look up Exhorder, you will swear you were listening to Pantera. Phil definitely took some of his vocal style from Exhorder. A lot of metal fans online will say that Pantera completely ripped off Exhorder. But Pantera just had better songs. They did. They had great songs. They worked harder. They toured the country, and Exhorder kind of stayed as a local Louisiana band, but definitely brought in that influence. And yeah, I think they're less embarrassed today, the remaining two guys of it now, because I think all these years later, you could say, yeah, we were in high school and college, not college, but that era of, early,
Well,
late teens, early 20s, you could laugh about it. But I know that in the early 90s, you'd be fucking crucified for saying like, yeah, that's what we sounded like. That's what we looked like. So it was easier to bury that shit before the internet too.
what do you think? Do you think that the glam rock from back then, though, is, I mean, those guys could still, they have makeup on.
Oh yeah.
They're still gonna kick the shit out you, man. I mean, now today, people, you're a man putting, no, you're not gonna do this. And you're gonna kick nobody's ass. So maybe that's why they're okay coming out with it now. Because really, look at it. I mean, when Motley Crue came out, they always like, what are these dudes? Come on, what you can't. But then as you get to know them, like, holy shit, these motherfuckers can kick somebody's ass. They may be putting on makeup, but they'll whoop your ass. And I mean, is that what the reason I'm saying is because I think that's why it's okay for them to say that now because they were badass and they know it's not like today where if you got men putting on women's it's not they're not going to kick maybe I don't know maybe they will kick your ass but not like not like freaking Nikki Six and it's going to beat somebody's ass when he's wearing because Nikki Six was a badass. I don't know if he is anymore, but he was at the time.
By the way, I don't even know if I just saw Motley Crue in the city play a tiny venue, 500 people. Dude, it was sick. But
Wow,
yeah,
wow. I know we're getting offset, but
we're getting off subject. But actually, I
I'm
think the
sorry.
answer to that is that you can't hide anything today. It's all on the internet.
Yeah, it's true.
Like Alice in Chains, people don't know Alice in Chains used to be a glam band. And then they
I didn't
became
know that.
grunge.
So I didn't
But
know that
because
either.
they don't want you to know that. You know what I mean? Because they know that no, we're tough guys from Seattle or whatever. So I think it was before the internet, and if you were a local band that did something completely different, you could make it so the national audience and the international audience would have no idea. And now you could easily dig it all up. And so you kind of have to look back and laugh at it. But the music was still great. So that's the answer. And if you look back, yeah, on the episode with Anthony Bryant, not only do we talk about it, I clipped it for YouTube. So there's a clip on YouTube about that too. But dude, it's funny. Every now and again on Twitter, they'll say like, if what subject could you give a TED talk on, like unprepared? And for me, yeah, 80s like glam metal, hair metal, like that's my specialty, way more so than military stuff. That's just the truth.